Welcome to another edition of the Joy Starters podcast. I told you in last season and an episode that this season was going to be something different. Normally I do a solo podcast and it's what's going on in my life. Am I leaving a prison? Am I speaking? What's happening in my life? What's going on behind the scenes? But it's usually a solo podcast. But this season I decided to take you behind the scenes and some of the people and some of the things that are going on behind the scenes and introduce you to these people and these two beautiful souls. I'm very open about saying this, but I don't know that I would be married had I not met these two beautiful souls. I met them at a conference last year, Shannon and Shirley Austin. And I met them at a conference last year with my now brother, Jeremy Anderson, and we just gravitated towards each other. I mean, we were over in that area together and we were just hugging and getting to know each other. And I remember, Shirley, we're at the end of the conference and we're like, yep, giving each other, our information and books and everything. And little did I know, and I always keep a handkerchief near me because I cry. I'm a crier. Cry when I'm happy, cry when I'm sad, cry when I'm joyful. But little did I know that was in June of last year that just a month and a half later that I would have trouble and have things that came up in my marriage that some of them were probably festering. Some were things that I brought in. Some were, just junk we all go through in marriage, right? And I remember reaching out to you, Shirley, and saying, gosh, I need you. And you became my marriage coach. And I have told people on social media, and I'll tell you again, I credit you both for saving my marriage. And what I love, and I'm going to shut up now and let you two talk. What I love about the work that we have done together and will continue to do, Shirley, is that it was never about my husband. It was always,
Ooh, that's the hard part. Yeah.
That's the awesome way.
it was always about me.
Yeah.
It was always about me. And I believe if more people would adopt and get that, and that's why I want to expose y'all to the world. I know y'all got different projects you're working on, man, but if we could teach that kind of accountability in our relationships, what a world it would be.
That's key, Rachel. That's key. And listen, thank you for having us.
Thank you so
our
much.
spirits are so aligned, and I just praise God for connecting us. You are so amazing. What Shannon and I do, one of the biggest things is helping people to turn around and to look at themselves.
Yeah.
Right? We've been married, it'll be 29 years in May, and we spent the first 10 years trying to change each other, and doesn't work. Nothing changed. And it was not until I submitted to God and I said, God, I can't do this anymore because what I'm doing is not working. And I'm trying to change him, and it's literally taking the breath out of him.
Yeah.
He had to have that conversation with him and God. That's when things began to turn around in our marriage. And in every couple that we have worked with, it does not work when you are focused on your spouse.
Doesn't.
You have to be focused on you. And listen, it's hard, right? It's hard because we're filled with guilt and shame and how I feel if I really say the truth, which is I'm a horrible spouse. I have not met my spouse's needs. I have not been kind. I have been disrespectful. Yeah. We don't like to look at ourselves like that person. But this is the beautiful thing. When you can look at yourself and you're honest about who you are and how you've shown up and how you've not shown up, then you can do something about it. It's a beautiful thing. Like there's freedom in that. You can do something about it. And then because you can do something about it, that now means that things can change, which is what we all are seeking, change.
And there's in several different career fields that this is amplified. I was a nurse for 20 plus years. And I remember being in the hospital, in a teaching hospital, on a floor and watching doctors do rounds. And the interaction between the attending physician and the intern, the attending physician and the medical student or the fellow, right? And those conversations were so frank
Mm.
and and honest. And well, why did you do that, Jim? And Jim had to, if it was something that didn't serve the patient, had to sit there in it and take full responsibility and accountability
Mm.
in special operations.
Mm.
It, for our service personnel. You see this head on after an engagement.
Mm.
If there was a friendly fire situation, if something just went awry, they're asking the really, really hard questions and they are taking ultimate responsibility. It was me. They are the first to raise their hand to say, it was me. What if I would have done this better, we would have had a better outcome.
Mhm.
And then where the sweet spot is in marriages, it's almost when you're fighting for accountability.
Yes.
It was me, babe. No, no, babe. No, listen. Hey, it was you were wrong, but I was even more wrong.
Mm.
You can get to a point where the accountability becomes that extreme, Rachel.
Hmm.
Now you have two people fighting not for each other, but for the marriage.
Woo! Because listen, with that analogy that Shannon just gave, somebody's life was at stake. That's why you had to take extreme accountability. You had to think about that in your marriage. Many people's lives are at stake. Yours, your spouse's, and if you have children.
Yes.
But being like, this is serious. Lives are literally at stake, and that's how we view it.
You know, what a man, so much to unpack. And I go back to saying this again, but what a beautiful world it would be if we could teach this kind of accountability. You know, my husband and I, he said this, and I've heard this before. You know, sometimes it ain't spiritual warfare. Sometimes it's just you.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's
Sometimes, and I say that jokingly, but it's true. But also in that same vein, in that same thought, I'm going to say the enemy hates marriage. He hates families. He hates love, and so he loves to find those places where you can drive a wedge, and you can, you know, and you can be resentful and not say what you mean and mean what you say, and then it grows, and then you're two ships passing in the night, or you're explosively fighting, or whatever that is, and so. Man, oh man, you guys have been posting some stuff lately that has just been so thought-provoking, and I think the thread that follows through all of it is accountability, and looking in the mirror deeply. When was because you guys wrote a book and were unashamed, and I saw you speak on stage where you talked about where you guys had exit plans, right? Like, you were like, "This ain't working," you know? Like, when was there a turning point for you guys? Was there a moment where you're like, "I am going to dig in. I'm gonna learn this person. I'm gonna look in the mirror. I'm gonna take accountability." Was it a singular thing, or was it over a period of time? Walk us through that, because I think people wanna know that you guys have been there before.
So it happened at different moments in time for both of us.
Okay.
Happened for Shirley first, and it happened when she entered into that space with God with extreme accountability. It was an event, but it was a process as well, but a short process for her because it was a short period of time. And I wouldn't say almost immediately, Rachel, but not too long after she entered into that space with God, I saw change.
Mhm.
But I was so stuck in this is not going to change. It's never going to, it's almost impossible. There's no hope. So I stayed in that space for a very, very long time at post her evolution. And it wasn't until just sometime later that I began to just do the same thing.
Mm.
Focus on me. How am I showing up? What am I doing? What am I not doing that is keeping us from being connected? Because I can't continue to say it's her because she was evolving.
Mm.
And so her evolution forced me to look at myself
Mm.
and, okay, God, what am I doing? Now, if we go back a little bit, when the proverbial stuff hit the fan,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I remember being in a place of forgiveness and what can we do? She was not there at all. She was like, I don't even know if I want to be, I don't even want to sleep in the same bed with you. I don't want to be around you. I don't know. I don't know right now. And, and, and what we were in a coaching session earlier, and we talked about this in the coaching session, which is no matter what the other person is doing or not doing, you do what you're supposed to do. No matter what
Mm-hmm.
the outcome is, it's not a quid pro quo thing here. If you do this, I'll do this. Nope. This is how I want to show up as a husband in
Mm-hmm.
my,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have that philosophy then. So as her negativity wore me down,
Mm-hmm.
I began to retreat and escape really take my focus off what was important in the marriage.
Mm.
And so fast forward, now she's doing the work and showing up and what have you, and I'm still not. So I'm not being affected by her movements, her actions, her whatever she's doing. It's because that's what her and God chose to do.
Okay.
And then I began to say, you know something, Shannon, you got to look at yourself. So the work for us individually happened and was remarkable. And it didn't happen at the same time.
And it's, it's so funny because people, a lot of, most of our clients will say, how long do you want me to wait? Do you expect me to deal with this? And my response is, well, there are still some things that I'm waiting for. There's still some things that he's waiting for. This is marriage,
Just marriage.
right? We're going to fall together. We're going to rise together.
Yes.
We're going to hurt together. We're going to heal together. This is marriage.
Yeah.
Period.
That's it. That's what we signed up for. In a covenant marriage, that's what we signed up for. So again, this podcast episode is very vulnerable because I'm talking about my own junk. I walked into my marriage, and Shirley knows this, and my learned behavior from generations forward was I was a runner. I'd run, and when things got bad, I'd try to run. And I remember one particular time, and I was the one trying to, well, you know what, an explosive and defensive and would yell and throw out the deep, just crazy stuff. And I didn't know how to be married, and I was just repeating generational junk until one day my husband said, hey, when we fight, I'm going to need you not to leave. Like that triggers me, big time. Go to the other room, whatever, but like, please don't leave. Like, please don't leave this house and go stay somewhere because that's triggering to me because of my experiences. And I was like, oh, okay. Okay. So I stopped doing that. But it's so interesting to me. I remember one particular moment of many with you, Shirley, and I was describing a situation and I was telling her how I wanted it to happen and what I needed out of that and how I had thought about how I was gonna try to get that to happen. And what I love about both of you and you, Shirley, is you're very blunt and very honest and open in a most loving way. And you said, you're being controlling. And I said, what? I'm not controlling. And you said, yes, you are. And you said, you can do it that way if you want to, and you might get that desired outcome, but it ain't going to feel good because you manipulated the situation to get that desired outcome. So the good feelings and the good gushy feelings that you think you're going to have when he does that, you ain't going to have them because you're being controlling. And it was like a light bulb went off, coach. Like, oh my, I am controlling. I am not going to change this.
Not even, listen, and this is the crazy thing, because so many times we can be manipulative and all these things and we get what we want, but it's not sustainable because we did it the wrong way. Our spirit comes through. Your spouse knows when your spirit is a love, is a covering, is a comfort, is a protection. They'll go to the ends of the world for you.
Mm.
But that manipulation, it doesn't last. Can't nobody ever sit here and say to the three of us here that I've manipulated and it has sustained me throughout life.
Mm.
I've had peace. I've had comfort. No.
No. Because you want a genuine response, right? Like you want a genuine response. And I was doing another podcast the other day and I was shouting out my husband because man, he's really mature in a lot of ways emotionally. And I remember one time recently, I could see us going down old patterns of it escalating and us both starting to yell and, and ever since working with you, we have fewer and fewer of those. But when we do have them, we're able to catch ourselves or go back very soon after and go, this is how I was feeling. I'm sorry. This is what preceded it. And communicate about it and squash it very quickly. But we're in the middle of this. I still remember exactly where we were. And he paused. And this was so radical, Shannon, for a man to do. He paused and said, when this is happening and I'm stressed out and we're both like escalating and yelling, and he said, you yelling back or you yelling doesn't do anything for me. Like it puts gasoline on the fire. He goes, what I really need is I need you just to hug me and tell me it's going to be okay. Something of that very, just hug me. And I was like, like, what? What? Like, what a moment of vulnerability on his part that produced like radical, life-changing behavior, right? Changing of my behavior and who I am moving forward. But man, that's on a man's side, accountability on both. But I just want to speak for my husband and to you, Shannon, man, because to me, that was so incredibly mature.
Well, it's the enemy fights so hard to get us to not remember that she is me, right?
Yeah.
And so anatomical differences and the emotional differences and the differences that exist are not differences, are just opposites, or it is the yin and the yang. It is the part of the cell that was divided, but the cell, they're still that's the sum of their parts. And so but there's such a concerted effort, and you felt the need to give a disclaimer to the fact that a man would do that, but why wouldn't a man do that?
Yeah.
Because the nature of a man is emotion, but not emotional.
Mm. Mm.
Right? So we are socialized to think that males, do not have emotions.
Mm.
That is such a departure from what God intended, what He created. We have emotions. We just aren't emotional.
Mm.
And there's a place for a woman being emotional.
Yes.
When it goes too far, okay, that's not good for whatever situation. But being emotional is what a lot of situations need.
Mm-hmm.
But if we ignore that, and he was able to connect with the fact that this is what will quell the fire, the rage, or the thing that is welling up in me, so that because what I'm really working on doing is not being emotional.
Yeah.
So you giving me that hug allows me to express my emotions, not become emotional, which makes us freak out.
Yeah.
The powerful thing about that experience that you all had, this is what my desire in wanting women to understand. We have so much power. Man, we have so much power. God gave it to us at birth. Every female that is born has the gift of nurture. That is our superpower. That is the thing that will literally drop a man to his knees. He will run through a wall for you. He will die on a sword for you when you nurture him. We have two boys, they're 25 and 26 now. When they were like 2 and 3, Shannon said to me, if you treated me the way you treated the boys, we would not have half the issues that we have. Now, at the time, as a very immature young wife, I said, you're a whole grown ass man. I'm not going to treat you like I treat them, right? I like my boys. Very nurturing, very loving. When they fall, I'm right there to scoop them up and to love on them, to kiss their boo-boo. I'm encouraging them. I'm telling them affirmations to speak at 2 and 3 years old. I'm speaking life into them. They don't even understand what I'm saying, but I'm speaking it into them. I'm loving them. Even when they do something that irritates me, I'm holding back my irritation.
Mhm.
Right? I'm extending my patience. When I'm dog tired, I'm getting up and I'm taking care of them.
Yeah.
So when I look at all of those elements, why wouldn't I want to offer that to my husband? This is the thing that women need to understand. As children, one or two things was happening. Either we're getting those things from our parents or we are not.
Okay.
Right? As a husband, Shannon, who did not get it, yearned for that because his mother was not that. The other thing is, your mother does give it to you. You leave your mother, you yearn for that. I'll always ask my mothers, especially those who have sons, how do you treat your son? And then she goes down, oh, my baby, da 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 da. And I'm like, okay, so then when your son becomes an adult, will you stop doing that? Girl, no, I'm not going to stop doing that. That's my, he always going to be my, I tell my kids now, you're 90 years old. You're my baby. So Rachel, if my sons leave our household and go to their wife, don't you think that they are then going to look to their wife to pick up where their mother left off at?
Yeah.
They're not going to just be like, oh, I'm an adult. I don't need this anymore.
Yeah.
Right? We have to think deeper. We have to get off of the surface. We have to get out of our feelings and our emotions, and we really have to see, what is it that my spouse needs? How is my spouse wired? We were talking with a couple right before we got on with you, and we were saying, you have to look at the nuances in your spouse's life, their experiences, because when you do that, you can have empathy and compassion instead of lashing out in defensiveness or getting easily offended or attacked, because you're saying, you know what, this behavior that's happening, my spouse is afraid. That's terror showing up. They're not trying to attack me. Something deeper is going on. Maybe what I did or what I said reminded them of something that happened when they were 5. This is that 5-year-old little boy showing up. When we have that type of empathy for our spouse, it literally changes the dynamics of our relationship, because I'm no longer taking it personal how Shannon is showing up.
Yeah. That's deep. That's deep. It's, and you and I have talked about this before, and I teach this in my stops with I'm changing the narrative. You know, anger is just the symptom. If you'll get curious enough to sit with it, if you'll get curious enough to get curious about your partner's anger, like you mentioned, there's oftentimes fear up underneath it. There's confusion, there's abandonment, there's whatever, it could be a myriad of things, right? But there's something underneath that bravado of anger, and we just see the anger, and then we have our, mechanisms of responding. And I recognize that was, you and I worked on that, on how I was responding and how I was showing up. And what I love about our work together, it was never about my husband. He was like a side character. I was the character. I was the one that needed to undergo the surgery, and I needed to go under an exam, and I needed to look at myself. And, and I was, again, I was talking to this other podcast the other day, and one thing I do want to say, I am by no means perfect and coach from an imperfect place and an honest place. But one of the things I did do is when I was in trouble, I went and got help. Like I knew I could not change on my own. So I put myself back in therapy. I sought you out. I got on my knees and I asked God, help me, God. I can't do this. Nobody taught me how to be married. And all my old stuff is showing up in my marriage. And I don't want to be this way. And because my husband and I have such a unique love story, and I believe it's part of our story, but we split up twice before we got married, and there are children involved in ours and many others. And so for us, this like it was like, if this wasn't going to happen, there was no coming back from this. You know what I mean? Like we couldn't get another do-over. Oh, well, they just split again, like so like you said, there are children involved and there's a lot of collateral damage. And I'm very grateful for both of you and the things that you are teaching couples out there. And I think we talked about it. It's, one of the hugest, biggest things is it starts with accountability and just being willing to turn the mirror on yourself, and say, what do I need to change? And what do you need as a partner? What do you need? That's such a beautiful question to ask. What do you need? How would you feel love for me? How would you feel love for me? Talk to me about some of the things that you guys have been sharing lately and teaching that have really been profound for both of you.
I just want to, piggyback on what you just said, because a lot of people have a challenge with it because they believe that then their feelings and their thoughts and their experiences will not be validated. But that's not the truth. The reason why accountability and extreme accountability is so important is because you cannot do anything about the other person. One of the things that we teach people, Rachel, which is so powerful, and it sounds so simple, is to have, what is your foundation built on? Because if you don't have foundation, which are your principles, then you will be anything and you do anything. So in our coaching process, our couples have to come up with principles that they are going to begin to live their life of. I want to be a person of integrity. I want to be faithful. I want to be honest. I want to be authentic. How are you going to show up? In my flesh, you understand? I could not be this way. I had to have something deeper than me. That is God. The principles that I want to live represent God. Yeah. So for us, that is one of the most powerful tools ever, because our principles guide us throughout our life. And if I don't say, this is who I want to be, a person of integrity, then somebody can come along and get me twisted, which has happened. We've had infidelity on both ends. We were not living a principled life. Wow. We were living day to day, just zombies, just going on how we felt. You understand? Your principle, your value system is guiding you. And you have to stand 10 toes down on that. So now nothing can get me twisted because I'm just so locked in with God and principles that God given me. So that's one of the things that we just encourage people to focus on your principles, focus on the accountability, focus on understanding your spouse. Always be a student of your spouse.
Yes.
Like that's a beautiful thing. Like you're exploring. I used to attack Shannon for his value system because our value system, our beliefs on things were drastic on many things. And I'm like, wow, why do you think like that? Where did you get that from? Like, oh my goodness. Right. And that was his belief system. I married him. Why am I going to attack you? And I chose to marry you. Nobody forced me to marry you.
Yeah.
You understand? So when I was able to get into a place where I'm open, I saw how my attack on him wore his heart down and what it did to him, right? Accountability. I was able to see that I wasn't the only one hurting. He's hurting too. Stepping into his shoes. Then Okay, how am I showing up? This is how I'm showing up. This is how it's affecting him. What are my action steps going to be?
Okay.
So I changed that. So then I began to explore. You know what that did? After a while, because initially he's not trusting that, right?
Yes.
But after a while where he sees, oh, Shirley, this is actually a part of Shirley. Like she literally is changing this part of her.
Mm.
It created a safe environment for him to like test the waters. Like, let me tell her something crazy. You know, something that a belief that I have or
Yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
it. Then when he sees how I handle it, how I deal with it, how I'm open now, like, really? Wow. Like, where did you adopt that thought process from? How do you, what are your, whatever the case may be. And so as we move on, we just talk. We
Yeah.
just talk. You
Yep.
we share with each other. We're the intimacy is there. You understand?
Yep.
The intimacy, if you do not have intimacy in your marriage, which is the one thing that we're all striving for,
Yes.
we are monolithic in that way.
Mhm.
We all want intimacy.
Mm.
Into me, you
You
see.
see. Into me, you see.
Understand? So it's just the only way you could see into me is if I allow myself to see into you.
Mm. Take the mask off. That's
Mm.
it's everything. It was, I keep using this word lately, and but it fits. It was revelatory to me over the past couple of years as I transitioned from being a speaker to what I call a sacred space holder, especially with men and especially with young men. And I had men tell me in college football settings and different settings like that, they'd say, "No one's ever talked to me about loving myself. No one's ever talked to me about joy." You said it earlier, Shannon. You said, you had a disclaimer for that. Men have emotions, right? They're sentient beings, right? Like, so it's been very interesting to me, and it's been such a journey for me to be able to be in that sacred space and hold that space for young men to look inward and start that journey of one self-discovery, of accountability, and then this journey of loving yourself, and I teach people this all the time, that loving yourself doesn't mean that you look past your faults. It's actually looking at your faults, the work that we did, Shirley, and continue to do, and saying, these are my faults and I want to work on them. But hey, I also love myself. I love all the versions of myself. I love who I've been. I love the way I laugh. I love, and when you truly love yourself and you truly know yourself and you've looked in the mirror, man, that for me was a big part of my healing journey, and being able to show up as who I wanted to show up as in my marriage.
I know you had some wisdom. And so I know you had some wisdom in the
Well,
things, the questions she asked.
right now I'm at such a different stage in my life because of the things that I've gone through, and the small stuff means so little now. It is in the grand scheme of things, if you can realize and value what life really means, you don't really have time for the emotional roller coaster games that I played when I was younger. I don't have the time.
Yeah.
I don't have the energy. I realize how very, very short life is. And and when I'm coaching now,
Mm.
we're just getting back into coaching, coming out of my treatment, my cancer treatment. I have very little patience, but a whole lot of patience when I see people cannot understand the urgency of now, no matter how old they are. We no longer have the luxury. Time is the great equalizer,
Yep. Yep.
and it ticks on. It doesn't care.
Mm-mm.
It doesn't care about what you didn't get and who didn't love you and all these different things. So what are you going to do with the time that you have? And that is my primary focus. When you when you feel that angst and anger welling up in you and you want to respond, you have to then throw in the equation time as a variable very quickly. And ask yourself the question, is it worth the energy I'm about to expend? And what would be a better utilization of that energy? And I have found that it was a better utilization of my energy to love on my wife, to just see her in such a different light. It's so funny. While you all were talking, while she was sharing, I was sitting here and I was looking at her hands. I was like, "Man, her hands are so pretty." She's letting her nails grow, and she used to be a nail biter and what have you. And I'm sitting there saying, literally, while she's talking, her hands are so pretty. And it's just like those moments when she's walking now. I could see her and I was like, man, she's fine. You know, and
She is fine. Let's just be honest. She is fine.
and so there's that's just I'm just choosing now at this stage of my life to focus on the things that really, 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 really just matter. And then not spend a whole lot. It's not that things that don't matter don't pop into my head, but I try to choke them out as quickly as I possibly can.
So let me just say this, and then I want any final thoughts that you guys have that you want to share with the world, and we will drop all of your information. Listen to me. If you're not in a relationship and you desire to be in a relationship and you know you have work to do before you meet that person, call Shannon and Shirley. If you're in a relationship and it's good and you want it to be better, call Shannon and Shirley. If your marriage is hanging on or it's on life support or it's right over the edge, call Shannon and Shirley. It is I credit them with literally with saving mine. But I had something happen last fall that is very similar to what you are talking about, Shannon. And that is I had 4 girlfriends lose husbands. 4.
Mm.
3 of them were unexpected, and one of them he was sick. And I was walking in my bathroom, and the Lord said to me, "You have the audacity to live as if you are not on borrowed time." And I stopped in my tracks. I mean, I know exactly where I was when he said it. And it was like, boom, right between the eyeballs. And I thought about exactly what you said, Shannon, the wasted energy in my entire life that I have wasted on stupid crap, being reactive. That is my generational thing passing down that I'm working on, being less reactive, sitting with it. But just the amount, I prayed half my life for this man. And the amount of time that I've spent fussing about stuff that don't even matter, that I can't even remember 2 weeks down the road what we were fussing about. It was not groundbreaking stuff. And God gave me the gift of waking me up, shaking up my perspective and saying, Rach, get it together because you prayed for this man and I sent him and you should appreciate him. And so I get it. I get it because I was so distraught over my friends' husbands and for them. And then God hit me with that message, and it's actually affecting my next project, and it's going to have to do with the next book I'm writing.
Mm. At a moment's notice,
At a moment's notice.
life can turn on a dime. And, this time last year, I didn't know I had multiple myeloma. At this time, at the conference last year when we met,
Yeah. Yeah.
I was sick and didn't know it. And so the year has been full of just treatments, and our life has changed. Listen, in December, we had a house fire.
I remember.
That could have just taken us out. Thank God. Right? And so it's like, man, what are we doing?
Yeah, perspective is so key.
What are we doing? And I try to just now, as I'm coaching, when I'm not coaching, when I'm just living, to live with that as, learn the things that we need to learn, the tools and things of that nature to do better and be better. But ultimately, don't sweat that small stuff and appreciate everything that that, that life has to offer us and appreciate it and be thankful.
I have a feeling we're going to do a version 2 of this, a part 2 of this, because we just scratched the surface today. But you guys are amazing. Thank you for being in my life. I thank God for sending you to me. I didn't know it at the time, either at that conference, what was to come and how much I was going to need you, Shirley. And so I'm so grateful to both of you. You're in my continued prayers, Shannon, both of you. And I'm telling you, please, please give them their contact information will be below in the show notes. Give them a follow. They post stuff every single almost day that is thought provoking. That's like bam, bam, bam. I need to think about that.
Yeah.
Give them a follow. Get in touch with them. And one of the things we're trying to do is do some sort of retreat or event together in the near future where you can get them one-on-one. And I apologize. It just happens to be my wonderful people that are blowing off my front porch just happen to come right at the end of this podcast. So if you hear that in the background, that's technology.
Look at it.
That's technology, but I'm so grateful for you two. Anything else you guys want to share as we wrap up?
One of the things I want to share is, so many people are lacking hope, right? They're looking at their situation and feel like there is no way that God can restore this, or there's no way that this can be fixed. And in the society that we're in now, is really like, for real, a microwave society. Okay, I'll just go on to the next.
Yeah.
And it's so many dangers in that. I mean, I could go down the rabbit hole. So I'm trying to streamline my thought, right, with this. But I just want to encourage you that there is hope, that God does restore.
Yes.
There is work for you to do.
Yes.
Stop running from the work, because the work face your fears. The work means you have to face the darkness in your heart. That's what the work means. And that's what people are running from. People are afraid to just be honest about who they are, their fears, sitting across from that little girl, sitting across from that little boy, and mothering themselves again and fathering themselves again because they weren't mothered or fathered, or whatever the case may be, whoever hurt them, the unforgiveness that you're holding on to. All of these things pours over into your marriage.
Mm.
So there is hope. There's just work for you to do.
Mm.
Figure out the work that needs to be done. And if you can't do it on your own, which most can't, then go get a third party. Shannon and I always say, it doesn't have to be us. We don't care. We just want you to get your healing. Go where you can get your healing. But
get your healing. That's it. It's that want to, that desire, that relentlessness. You're not okay. And that's one thing in my imperfection that I can share with everybody who's listening to this. I knew I wasn't okay. I knew I needed help. And I was like, I can't rest till I get some outside perspective of people that will tell me the truth. Because my feelings are lying to me. My triggers are lying to me. My past is lying to me. And I am not showing up the way that I think I'm showing up to my children and my husband. I'm showing up in other ways that I can't see that involve my blind spots. So what I would say to anybody out there within the sound of this podcast is be relentless in seeking your healing. However, like they said, you get it. If you get it from watching YouTube videos or therapy or whatever, however, hiring them, which I am a huge proponent of, but be relentless in getting your healing, because the people talk about this. My husband, this is the last thing I'll say. My husband's wife she's my husband's wife. My husband's mom was a hospice nurse. And she's told me many stories of people on their deathbed, and never once did they wish for more money or more success. Not once. They wished for more connections. They wished for the courage to live as who they were. They wished for more of those special moments, those, like old school, like committed to memory soul moments that you're going to look back at. They wish for that. That's what they wish for. And so be relentless in getting that, because this is really the last thing I'll say, but I am so emphatic about this. My husband could never fill me up. Not all of his affirmation in the world, Shannon and Shirley, could never fill me up until I loved myself first.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. That's good stuff.
Yeah. Woo! We're gonna do a part 2 because I'm just telling you, we could just this could end up an hour and a half, and y'all are amazing. So we will put all of their information below. I'm so incredibly grateful to both of you. Thank you for being my friends. Join me in prayer, continued prayer for Shannon. I got a praying audience, and please give them a follow, give them some love on socials. And if you have an event or they have a very special project coming up, but if you have an event, they have a book, by the way, and we'll put that information below. But if you have an event you'd like for them to speak at, a retreat, a conference, or you'd like to hire them, we'll also put that contact information below. Thank you guys. Adore you.